Get started. Hi guys, welcome back. You want to make a pillow cover and you only have scraps of fabric? No problem, let's do it. I am going to go ahead and pick out the pieces of fabric I want to use from this pile, and then we are going to make a pillow cover together. Pillow is done. Let me know what you think. We are making another pillow and we are using more of my fabric scraps to make this pillow. The only difference is that we are going to be applying a trim, and I'll show you how to do just that. But before we get to that stage, we actually have to go ahead and start making panels, two panels, one for the front and one for the back from these pieces of fabric. Now, in the last video, we did some triangles. In this video, we are not going to be cutting triangles. We're just going to be using the pieces of fabric as they are. So let's get started. To apply this brush looped, it's a looped brush fringe. It's a brush fringe. Most brush fringe has the loops cut, but this one is not cut, it's looped. So it's a looped brush fringe, and I am going to be starting, I am not left-handed, I am right-handed, so I'm going to start on this side here. And what I'm going to do is just let it overshoot the side of the panel here. And then I'm going to go ahead and stitch it onto the panel right around. And for this, you can use the biggest stitch setting on your sewing machine. And with the loops being, with the fringe not being cut, sometimes it does get caught on the presser foot, so it takes a little time. And then the brush fringe itself is not very deep. But stick with me, we'll get it done. Okay, so generally I would turn the corner with the fringe, but I'm not going to do that with this because it's not very deep and the loops are getting caught on the on the presser foot. So I am just going to start again by just putting this across and start stitching. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is fit these two pieces on top and then stitch. Okay. Now when you're doing an envelope pillow, the end that you want to be on the outside when you're done should be under the bottom. So I want this part to be on the outside, so it's under the bottom. Okay, so I am gonna put a couple pins in and then I'll show you what I do next. Yeah, so I am gonna flip this baby over, and because my brush fringe is so narrow, I'm gonna have to make sure I keep poking it in when I'm stitching. But basically my guide for stitching the pillow together is gonna be this stitch around the perimeter that I use to stitch the brush fringe onto the fabric panel. So I'm gonna go ahead and start stitching. So you see I am using this stitch as my guide. I'm just gonna keep tucking in my very skimpy brush fringe so that when I'm done I do have some fringe showing. That's it. Now I am just gonna reinforce the part at the opening. Yeah, thank you so much for being here, friends. I hope you enjoyed this video lesson. I hope you learned something. Drop it in the comments, let me know. I am going to be showing you how to make an envelope pillow with bullion French. Okay, I am going to be using a piece of fabric sample. This might just be where I cut it. Let me just measure. 13 inches, 13 inches, 13 inches, 13 inches. There we go. So we are going to be cutting the fabric right down this crease. I'm going to fold it a little less than a halfway. Yeah, that's good. $11 inches, 11 inches. We are good. There we go. Turn this thing down. It's getting mega hot. Okay. So now I am going to cut this just like so. Then I am going to do a double hem. Okay. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and flat stitch my double hem. Okay, I am gonna have to cut a piece of this panel, so I'm gonna try to figure out now how much I need to cut off. Okay, so now I am gonna take this off. That's gonna wait in the wings, and I'm gonna get my bullion fringe. I'm gonna turn this over. Just trying to find the end here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I am going to stitch the fringe on the right side right across the side here. I'm just gonna cut it a little longer than I need. There we go. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Cut it longer than I need it. There we go. Now I am, so get this. Just have to line it up. Put in a few pins. Okay. Now my line here is going to be my guide to stitch this side on. Before I stitch along the two sides here, I'm going to stitch the other end. Whenever you can make something easier for yourself, never make it more difficult. Keep it simple. I'm just going to reinforce this area by stitching it again. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I am just going to go ahead and reinforce the corners where I cut off the fringe. There is so much that if you know, you can make better decisions, informed decisions when you are doing DIY, right? So if you want to learn about DIY, doable DIY decor for your home, making informed decisions, go ahead and hit that subscription button and remember to turn on your bell notification icon. So with every new upload, you will be notified, right? In this video, we will be looking at 7, or you could even say 9 things that you need to know to make an informed decision when you are deciding on your window treatments, right? And so the first thing we are going to look at is F, double, and FL. Now, FW stands for finished width. FL stands for finished length. Now, your finished width and your finished length are the measurements that your window treatment will measure when you're done making it, right? So, for example, you have a curtain rod there, and those are your brackets there. And your window treatment starts from here to here, right? This area here will be your finish width. Along here will be your finished length. Now the opposite of FW and FL is CW and CL. CW stands for cut width. CL stands for cut length. Now your cut width and your cut length will be the measurement of your finished width and your finished length, plus all your hems and your seams, any increments that you need to add for what you're doing with the window treatment that you're making, right? So CW plus, not plus, but and CL. CW is, we could say, equals to FW plus hems, seams, any other allowances, plus, very, very important, the fullness of your draperies, right? So, plus the fullness of your draperies. CL would be the same thing. Cut length would be finished length plus hems, seams, allowances, and of course you wouldn't have your fullness going lengthwise, you would have it going widthwise. So that's the only difference here with your cut length. Now let's look at overlap. What is your overlap? Your overlap is the area between the two curtains where they meet and they overlap. Now this is a grommet curtain, so this does have an overlap, right? So if you look here, you will notice that there's this section that overlaps over the other section. Now most curtains will have an overlap. However, curtains that have like a pocket heading or a tunnel top or a rod pocket will not usually have an overlap. Why? Because they butt up to each other at the middle of the curtain rod. They do not overlap, right? Now, the next thing is stack back. Stack back, the stack back space. Where is that? The stack back space is the space between the window and where your curtain rod ends over here, where your curtain sits, right? Yeah, so essentially your stack back space is where your draperies will sit, right? So you can actually have a stack back space that allows you to take the curtain off the window completely. However, there are situations where you may have to leave some of the curtain over the window. That is where your stack back space would start from, right? So it's essentially where your curtain panels sit when they are pulled back, right? Now the next thing we want to look at is projection. Now what is projection as it pertains to your draperies? It is how far out from the wall your draperies sit. So essentially your projection will be the depth of your bracket that you use to mount your curtain rod. So your projection can be as far off the wall as that, or it can be closer to the wall. So this doesn't work. So you determine if you want your projection to be 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches from the wall. Now, usually if you have layered treatments and you're going to have something behind and behind, then you would want to have a deeper projection to accommodate for other draperies behind the front panels. Now, all these terms that we are using are terms that are used in the trade, and so even if you're not doing DIY, it's good to know these terms, because at least you will be knowledgeable when somebody else is doing it for you, right? And you'll be able to ask the right questions. So now let's look at return. What is return? Your return has a projection, but your projection doesn't have a return, right? Now we just look at the rod for the projection. No, not the rod, sorry. The bracket for the projection. Now for the return, we also have a bracket. However, this bracket here will sit on the wall, and then there will be a rod on the front section here. For some reason I can't locate the rod for these brackets, but pretend you have a rod going across the front here. Now your draperies will come across the rod, and then they will return to the wall. Now return to the wall, not return back. Return back would be redundant, right? So the bracket sits on the wall, the drapery comes across the front, and then return to the wall. Now I say that your return always has a projection, and that is because, yeah, the bracket does project from the wall, right? However, your projection only does not have anything that allows the draperies to return to the wall. Now the last thing we are going to look at is fullness. As it pertains to draperies, what is your fullness? Your fullness is how much pleat or gathers you have in your draperies, right? Now you can have a single fullness. A single fullness, usually when you put your panels together, it's essentially flat, right? Now I have these here temporarily. If you should look at this, this would look like maybe a 1.5 fullness, right? It's not a double fullness, because if it's a double fullness, then your cut width would start with 2 times your finished width, right? And so you will get more pleats or more gathers. You can do triple fullness, 3 times, 4 times fullness. So the more gathers and pleats you want is the more you have to up your fullness, right? 4, 5, yeah. And then you should be aware that that is going to take more fabric. If you're doing it yourself, fine, you're DIYing. However, if you're taking that to a workroom, yeah, so it will cost you a pretty penny. Now, you may wonder why you need to know all this. As I said before, if you're not DIYing and you're going to somebody to do it for you, you'll be knowledgeable, right? So you can be able to communicate with the person that's going to be doing your draperies. Also, if you're DIYing, you need to know, okay, so I'm going to have a return here. So I have to make sure I add in the return in the calculation of my fabric. So, sorry about that. So how much fullness do I want? Do I want my draperies to be flat? By the way, this is just temporary. I'm still making draperies for several windows in my home, right? Yeah, so do I want like lots of gathers? Am I going to want pleats? What type of heading am I going to want? So you need to be aware of your fullness, right, in order to do your calculation. Your step back space. You need to know, okay, do I want my draperies to sit all the way off my window? Then maybe I have to make sure that my rod go far back enough from the window so I have that space to take the draperies off the window so that I will let more light in, right? So yeah, every one of these terms that we have just looked at, they are important. So in this video, I am actually doing a tutorial on how to make a Roman blind. Now, I do have videos on the channel that shows you how to do it. However, this video is a bit different in that I am actually giving you step-by-step written instruction with a few sketches here and there to help you to easily construct your Roman blind. In this lesson, we are looking at how to successfully hang your curtain rods to accommodate your curtains or your draperies in your home. Now, I have a list here, things you will need. That is your checklist. You may need one or more of these items in order to be able to do that DIY project, right? Now, the first thing is your rod and your brackets. Go to the store and choose the rod and the bracket that you want, because that will actually influence everything else. Even when you're making window treatments, it's best to have your curtain rod in place and then measure from that in order to calculate for your fabric to make your curtain, right? Now, one of the things that's important is when you are hanging your rod for your window treatment, you have to make sure that you have enough brackets. Yeah, it's a given. There's going to be one on the right and there's going to be one on the left. But depending on the expanse, you may need one in the middle, or you may need even more than one in between the two end brackets, right? And that is particularly important if you are DIYing your rod, or if you just picked up a rod in the thrift store without brackets, right? Now, if you're DIYing like I did, I just went into the hardware store and I got myself some water pipes and I used them for window, for rods, right? And I had to buy brackets to go with them. So be cognizant of your expanse and how many brackets you will need to successfully hang the curtain rod to accommodate the curtains or the draperies. The next thing we're looking at is anchors. There are anchors that are made for concrete, brick, any type of masonry structure. And so be cognizant of your situation. If you have a concrete wall, then make sure you choose anchors or screws for concrete, right? If you have drywall, then make sure you choose your anchors for your drywall. Now, there are like lots of anchors that you can buy cheap in the dollar store, which there's nothing wrong with that. However, the cheapest sometimes can become the dearest. So the most expensive, yeah, that's an expression we use back home in Jamaica. I'm not quite sure if you know that expression, but yeah, the cheapest can sometimes become the dearest, because you can buy an anchor that doesn't go with your wall, or you try to put it in your drywall or something, and you put your rod, then you hang your curtain and it rips out. Then what? You got to go patch that drywall and get everything done right. And that is why we say it becomes the dearest, because then you have to go spend more money to do all that patch job. Okay, yeah, another thing that will influence your anchor that you get is the weight of the window treatment that you are hanging. Different anchors will carry different weights, so be aware of that. Yeah, the next thing you need is a drill. You need a drill because you will need that drill. Well, you don't need the drill to screw the screw in, because you could use a screwdriver, right? But you will need a drill to drill the hole into the wall to accommodate your anchor. Now, I would suggest to you that when you buy your anchor and you are going to drill your hole, you look at the package, because usually they will tell you what size bit you need to use to drill the hole for the anchor that's in the package. If you do not have that, then the best thing to do is to keep your bit the same size as the anchor. Okay? Now, the next thing is, yeah, we spoke about the screwdriver you can use to screw in your screw into the anchor. Now, your hammer or mallet, maybe a rubber mallet might be better, because you will need it to tap that anchor into the hole after you have drilled that hole. Next, you need a measuring tape. The measuring tape will actually help you to measure out on your wall around your window where you want to place your curtain rod. Now, the tape that you should use is a metal tape. Never use a cloth or a vinyl tape because they are not rigid and so they can skew your measurement. You need to use a rigid metal measuring tape. You also need a pencil. In a minute, we'll show you why you need the pencil. A stud finder. You may or may not need a stud finder. A stud finder actually helps you to find where the studs are in the wall. Yeah, your stud finder will help you to find studs in your wall. So for example, if you have your window and you are close to a stud where you can use the stud, where you can drill or screw your rod directly into the stud, then that will be a good thing, right? So you won't need the step of putting in the anchor. You can just screw your rod directly into the stud. Now the next thing is a level. And I put a level in because, take for example, you measure from the ceiling to find the placement, or you measure from the floor to find the placement, and you live in an old crooked home like mine and everything is not all squared, then your window treatment can be wonky, right? And so when you put one bracket in, it's a good idea to rest your rod on it, and that is why I say you should have help. Help comes in that you rest your rod on the one side and the person that's helping you will hold the rod up to where the other side is supposed to be. Then you use your level in the middle to make sure that your curtain is going to be level when you are finished installing it, right? So I would suggest that you should always use your level, especially if you're living in an old crooked home like I am in, right? Crooked is character, right? So that's how I'm looking at it. So yeah, this is your checklist in order to be able to install rods for your draperies. Now let's look a bit at the steps that you would take in order to install your curtain rod. We are going to look at how to measure to locate where we want to put our brackets to receive our rods and subsequently our curtains or draperies, right? Now, if you have a window that is far down from your crown molding, one of the things you want to make sure you do is measure from your casing. Measure 8 to 10 inches above your casing to locate where to put your bracket. However, if you do not have a great expanse here, what you can do is measure 1 to 2 inches from the crown molding to determine where your rod will go. Now the 1 to 2 inches will ensure that you don't have like a big gap of wall in between your crown molding and your curtains. Another thing I want to say to you is, if you have a big expanse of wall between your casing, your window casing and your crown molding, then make sure you always measure from your casing, because if you measure from your crown molding 1 to 2 inches and you put your rod, what you'll have is a big expanse of blank wall staring at you, and I never like seeing that. I don't think it looks good. If you plan to put layer treatment, then you could put a Roman shade under, and then you could let it fall just above the casing of the window, and then you won't see that blank wall. However, that's more fabric, that's more time, that's more money, even if you're doing it yourself, right? Worse if you're taking it to the workroom, right? And so I would suggest to you that if you have that expanse, just measure from above your casing 8 to 10 inches, right? Now, for the sides, how far off the casing should you put your bracket to house your rod? I would suggest that a sweet spot is between 4 to 6 inches. And the reason I say that is because that will ensure that you don't have light seepage at the edge of the curtain. It will also ensure that you will have enough space for stack back. Remember, check that video out if you don't know what stack back is. I spoke about 10 different terms that is useful for you to know when you are trying to DIY or even get in a workroom to do your curtains or your draperies, right? And so that will ensure that you have enough space for stack back, and your window will be able to get off your curtains will be able to get off your window, so you can let in more light, right, as necessary. Now, there's nothing that says you can't go above that 6 inches. You can go 8, 10, 12, right? However, as I said before, it's more fabric, it's more work, it's more money. If you're DIYing it yourself, it's more for you to deal with. And if you're going to the workroom, yeah, you got to pump that budget up, right? So let's keep it 4 to 6 inches away from the casing of the window. Here, we're going to go ahead and say, okay, we want it to be 4 inches off the casing on both sides. Now, another thing is, depending on your situation, there might be some architectural elements in the space that will affect where you place your curtain rods. And so, yes, you have to evaluate that. So what we're doing here is general, give you an idea, set you on the path, but then you have to evaluate your situation, just like you have to evaluate, okay, what type of wall structure do I have to buy the correct screws and or anchors. It's the same thing with your window placement, right? With your curtain placement. It's the same thing with your rod placement, right? You have to evaluate your space and then figure out where to put your rod, right? So 4 inches off, and we're going to go with this expanse kind of look a bit big here. So I don't think I want to come from the crown. What I want to do is go from the casing. So let's go 6 inches above the casing. Now that we have decided, and remember, we are using our rigid metal tape to do all our measurements, just so that we don't end up in any issues. You could also use a square to make sure that when you're measuring, you're getting things as square as possible. And so, yeah, what we will do here then is measure 6 inches up. I didn't have chalk on that checklist, but maybe just to ensure that you get it right, you could use a piece of pale, maybe white chalk. You don't have to press on it too hard. You could even use tailor's chalk, because this is trying to make it as easy and as simple as possible for you to be able to DIY, right? And so what I would do is measure 6 inches this side, 6 inches this side, and then I would go ahead and draw a line. My line is so wonky and my marker is finishing. Okay, but I would draw a line all the way across with my chalk. And then the next thing I'll do is measure my 4 inches here. Measure my 4 inches here. Then I would go ahead and Oh, this can make it easier for you, right? So let's forget about measuring the 4 inches on the sides here. Easy does it, right? Easy does it. If you can make something simple for yourself, don't make it complicated. And so what I would suggest that you do is go ahead and use your square, draw a line from the top of the casing here all the way up to this line. Do the same thing over here. And then measure 4 inches from where the lines intersect here, and then you will know where to put your brackets. Isn't that simple? Yeah, that is way simpler than what I was gonna do there. So yeah, we measure 6 inches up, draw a line across, then take your line from your casing using a square all the way up to intersect with this line, and then where it intersects, measure 4 inches out, right? 4 inches out, and that is where you put your bracket. Now that you have marked where you are going to put your bracket, what you're going to do next is put the bracket on and make sure that your mark is at the top of your bracket. Then you're going to get your pencil, and I say a pencil because a pencil has a sharp point that can go through the holes. So you're going to get your pencil and you're going to make your marks. And the marks that you make, that is where you are going to use your drill to drill holes. Now remember, you need to have the appropriate drill bit for the appropriate size anchor. Now, after you have drilled your holes and you get your mallet or your hammer and gently tap your anchor into the holes, then you get your bracket and you put your bracket back over the anchors, and then you go ahead and you can use the drill or you can use a screwdriver and screw into the anchor to hold your brackets in place. You do the same thing over here. Now, depending on the expanse, if you want to put another bracket at the center, then you just have to measure across to see what the measurement is, divided by 2, and you find where to put your center bracket. You put the bracket on just like so, make your marks, drill your holes, put the anchor in, put the bracket back on, and go ahead and screw the thing into, the anchor. And of course, when you're done putting your brackets on, you're going to go ahead and put your curtain rod on, and it's ready to receive your curtains. We are going to look at how to use fabric remnants to create a floor cloth. Okay, so the same way you create a floor cloth, you could go ahead and create a floor runner or a floor mat, right? And so I have maybe 5 pieces of fabric here, but what I want to do is to pick 3 pieces out because I'm working with another piece of fabric that I'm going to be showing to you soon. And so I am going, my parameters are the measurements of that piece of fabric. And so I think I want to use this. And it's okay to have a little more rust or red. Yeah, I think I want to use, oh, the red is a bit standout, maybe not. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with these 3 pieces. So I will take these away. Now, the first thing I am going to do, well, maybe not the first thing, because the first thing was to choose the pieces I'm going to use. And now the second thing I am going to do, now that the fabric pieces are relatively straight, right? And they have a serge around the perimeter, so I am not going to cut them. I am just going to use them like they are, and so I'm going to go ahead and stitch them together. Now I should mention that I am using a dual duty all-purpose thread, right? Especially when you're working with synthetic fabrics, I would suggest that you stay away from using anything that's weighing more on the cotton side. I would prefer to stay like for a polyester. And just for a little interest here, I am using a blue on the bottom for my bobbin and a green on the top. Now I'm just going to stop chatting and I'm going to go ahead and just what is it called? Time lapse. Yeah, that's what I was trying to remember. I'm going to go ahead and time lapse stitching the fabric pieces together. Okay, so the next thing I am going to do is see how the seams are kind of puckering. Now, even if I press it down, what's going to happen is if you decide to wash your floor cloth, the seams may just come back just the same as they are now inside your floor cloth. And the last thing you want to do is to have that bulge. So what I am going to do is put my sewing machine on a decorative stitch function. And then I am going to open the seams and I am going to stitch along this side, stitch along this side, and the same thing for this. So I'll go ahead and do a time lapse. My seam, even if I wash the floor cloth, will stay flat. I have this piece of felt fabric. Yeah, it's a piece of fabric. You do have woven and non-woven fabric. This is non-woven. I am going to, yeah, I was saying before that this is actually a piece of non-skid or non-slip felt, and I am pretty sure, yeah, I need to turn the right side. I am pretty sure that I bought it at Costco. Yeah, I'm pretty sure of that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna fold this for a bit. I'm trying to find the center here. Okay, so I am gonna go ahead and use a pin to mark the center. There we go. Mark the center. And then I'm just gonna open this back. I am gonna get my piece of non-woven fabric and I am gonna go ahead and find the center of it also. Then I'm gonna put the center, line it up with the center of my panel. Then I'm just gonna open it. Yeah. And I'm gonna put a few pins in place just so my fabric doesn't shift. You know I like to do that, right? Yeah. Now, the next thing I am going to do is to get my scissors, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the excess fabric off. Now I'm going to do a time lapse, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch right around the perimeter. Now, I'm changing my mind. I am going to flip this and stitch on this side because this non-skid fabric is a bit sticky, so I have to be helping it along a bit too much, and I don't want to stretch it. So I'm going to stitch on this side. Still gonna have to help it along because it's probably gonna want to stick on the sewing machine, but it's better. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, of course, finish taking the pins out. How many are there? Okay, I think they're out. We are going to flip this inside out. I'm using my scissors to poke the ends out, but you gotta be very gentle because your scissors has a point and you don't want to rip your fabric. Okay, so now with this opening here, you could go ahead and slip stitch it, but I'm not going to slip stitch this because what I want to do is the same stitch that I used on the seams here, I'm going to use right around the perimeter. And then we are going to talk about a next dimension that you could take your floor cloth to, right? So let's go. That's it, my friends. Our floor cloth is done. However, if you want to take it up a notch, what you could do is get some trim and apply some trim. Now I have two trims. I have this one and I have this one. This one feels a bit to me like it's getting lost, and so I don't think I'm going to use this one. I think I'm going to use this one. Now, I would suggest to you that if your floor cloth or rug is going to be in a high traffic area, for example, in front of an entrance door, in front of an entrance, then I would say forego the trim. But if it's going to be in a low traffic area, like in the bathroom, for example, you could, or even at your bedside, you could go ahead and add your trim. Now, I am toying with the idea of just putting trim on both short sides or putting trim right around. Now, I could do trim on the end here, and then I could do another layer of trim like so, to give it a little more substance. But I think I am thinking I am going to do the trim right around and just keep it light with one row of trim. Yeah, so let's get stitching. So the end here, I am going to turn under, and I'm going to start it right here. And I'm So this is how I do the corner. I turn it just like so, and then I just fold this little part down flat. That's it. And then I just stitch right onto it. I'm gonna go back, come forward, and then turn the corner. Okay, friends, so my rug is finished, or is it finished? I am thinking that I may want to take it a bit further, and I may want to add some gimp trim on top of this trim. And I think I'm going to do just that. The only thing is, I was looking at the green, I was looking at the peach, and the peach does go well with the colors here. However, it looks a bit dainty, and I think I would prefer more of a pop of color, and the green is not out of place. It's just a deeper shade of green, but to me that's okay. That is okay. Yeah, another thing I want to say to you guys is, if you're doing a floor cloth and you want to add a trim around the edges and it's going to be in a high traffic area, gimp would be your best choice. It's just plain simple. It takes a bit of a hardware, right? So it should be good. Now, yeah, let's go gimp it up. Gimp it up. Gimp it up. So I'm just folding the end here, fold it under, and then I'm just gonna put it here and start stitching. So let's go ahead and time lapse it. This, my friends, is our DIY floor cloth finished with a non-skid back and trims. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Also, please like, share, and subscribe. Hope to see you for the next video.